Joe Rogan was reportedly shaken after watching this. But why? There's a moment in the story that people can't seem to forget. A small clip, a single line, a subtle reaction, and somehow it was enough to make people stop, rewind, and question everything. Because according to online chatter, that exact moment reportedly caught the attention of Joe Rogan, and not in a casual way, not as entertainment, not as background noise, but as something off, something he couldn't just ignore. Now, if you followed Rogan for any amount of time, you already know this. He's built an entire career on spotting inconsistencies. Whether it's politics, media narratives, celebrity behavior, or cultural trends, he has a reputation for pausing when something doesn't add up. He doesn't always jump to conclusions, but he does notice patterns. And more importantly, he notices people. So when clips involving Erika Kirk started circulating online, most viewers saw what looked like a familiar narrative: a grieving widow, a public figure speaking about loss, a woman leaning on faith during a painful time. On the surface, it was emotional, relatable, even comforting to some. And for a while, people accepted it exactly as it appeared. But then something changed, not all at once, but gradually, clip by clip, moment by moment. People started picking up on small details, the kind you normally ignore, until you don't. According to multiple online discussions, Rogan allegedly went through several of these clips himself, not casually, but carefully, rewatching, pausing, observing. And what stood out to him, according to those claims, wasn't outrage, it wasn't anger, it was something quieter, something more unsettling. Because at one specific moment, one that's now widely shared, Erika Kirk says the name Jesus, and for many viewers that should have been a grounding moment, a sincere expression of faith. But instead, people focused on something else entirely: her expression, her eyes, the timing, the shift. Now, to be clear, this isn't about theology, it's about perception. Because according to people discussing the clip, it didn't feel natural to them. And allegedly, Rogan noticed the same thing. Some claim he even replayed that exact moment multiple times, trying to understand what felt different, what didn't quite land. And here's where things start to go deeper, because this wasn't just about one clip anymore. People began looking backwards, revisiting earlier interviews, old posts, previous statements, and they started noticing something that at first seemed minor. In many of Erika Kirk's early appearances, especially right after Charlie's passing, there was frequent mention of faith, of strength, of belief. But one specific detail stood out. The name Jesus was largely absent. Now, on its own, that might not mean much. Different people express faith in different ways. Some are more general, some are more specific. That's normal. But once that observation was pointed out publicly, especially by commentators online, it spread quickly. People went back, rewatched, double-checked. And then something changed, because not long after that discussion gained traction, Erika publicly used the name Jesus in a clip that quickly went viral. And instead of settling the conversation, it intensified it. Viewers didn't just listen to what was said, they watched how it was said. And once again, the focus returned to her expression, that same subtle shift, that same moment people couldn't quite explain. And according to reports circulating online, that's the clip that allegedly reached Rogan's orbit, a man who has spent years interviewing thousands of people, watching faces, reading behavior, picking up on micro-reactions most people miss. The claim is that his takeaway wasn't complicated. It was simple. Allegedly, this feels like performance. Now, whether that's accurate or not is still unconfirmed, because it's important to state clearly, Joe Rogan has not publicly commented on Erika Kirk. No podcast, no post, no direct statement. But for many people, that silence is part of the story, because Rogan isn't known for reacting instantly. He tends to observe first, process later, and speak only when he feels there's something worth saying. Meanwhile, outside of that silence, the internet kept digging, and this is where the story becomes more complex. Attention shifted towards Erika's background, her personal history, her connections, and one detail that gained traction involved a person she had previously referred to as a roommate. According to claims made by online commentators, that individual was later identified as her cousin, a detail that by itself isn't controversial, but the critics argued that the way the relationship was presented felt incomplete. Then came another layer, a comment reportedly made by a family member suggesting that Erika has Jewish heritage, that her family has celebrated Jewish traditions, and that there is a deep respect for that background. Again, on its own, none of this is unusual. People have diverse identities, mixed heritage, layered belief systems. That's completely normal. But the conversation online wasn't about whether that's acceptable. It was about whether that complexity was being fully represented. Because at the same time, Erika was being embraced by a large audience as a very specific figure, a symbol of Christian faith, a public representation of belief, a grieving widow grounded entirely in that identity. And for some viewers, the contrast between those two narratives raised questions. Not conclusions, just questions. Then came another moment that people couldn't ignore. A story Erika shared publicly, one that on the surface sounded warm, even personal. She described a routine involving her late husband, a Friday night habit, turning off the phone, putting it away, and saying Shabbat Shalom. Now, for many viewers, that phrase stood out immediately, because Shabbat Shalom is traditionally associated with the Jewish Sabbath, not a casual phrase, not slang, but something tied to a specific religious practice. And once again, the internet did what it always does. It connects dots. Perhaps too quickly, perhaps not, because now all the previously discussed details started being viewed together. The clips, the expressions, the timing of certain statements, the background connections, the Shabbat story. Individually, each piece might seem insignificant, but collectively they created a narrative that some people found difficult to ignore. And according to online speculation, this is where Rogan's alleged reaction shifted, from curiosity to something closer to disbelief, not because of any single detail, but because of the pattern. Still, it's important to stay grounded here, because none of this confirms intent, none of this proves deception, and none of this replaces direct statements from the people involved. What it does show, however, is how quickly perception can change in the digital age, how small moments can be magnified, and how narratives can evolve, sometimes faster than facts. At the center of all of this is a simple question, not about religion, not about background, but about authenticity. Because in a world where millions of people watch, listen, and connect emotionally to public figures, authenticity matters. And when even a small number of viewers begin to feel that something doesn't align, they start asking questions. Right now, that's where this story stands. Questions, speculation, interpretation. Erika Kirk still has the opportunity to address these discussions directly, to provide context, to clarify, to explain. And until that happens, the clips remain online. The conversations continue, and people will keep forming their own conclusions. As for Joe Rogan, if the reports are true, he hasn't said anything publicly yet. But if history tells us anything, it's that when something genuinely doesn't sit right with him, it tends to come up eventually. So now the question shifts to you. Is this being overanalyzed? A case of the internet reading too much into small details? Or are these the kind of inconsistencies that actually deserve a closer look? Let me know what you think. Drop your perspective in the comments. And if you found this breakdown helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because this story is still unfolding.